Well, the Russian war in Ukraine is, of course, one of the key issues being discussed this week at the United Nations General Assembly annual meeting in New York. Our US correspondent Kethevane Gorjestani is there and she joins me now. Kethevane, what's the American reaction been to that call by Vladimir Putin for partial mobilization?
Well, there hasn't been a direct reaction today following the actual official announcement, but the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, yesterday in Washington had sort of preemptively addressed the potential of this announcement, as well as the announcement on those what they call the sham referenda. And what he said was that this call for partial mobilization and the referenda were really the signs and they were reflective of the struggles of Russia in Ukraine, specifically about that partial mobilization. He said that it was simply a sign that Russia needed to basically throw more personnel in, more troops in, because of the gains that Ukraine had been making in recent weeks on the front. And so this was really a sign of the weakness of Russia right now on the battlefield. And he had some very harsh words for Putin's Russia, sort of belittlement of the Russian president, saying that these are not the actions of a confident country. These are not acts of strength. Quite the opposite. And he was also asked whether this was worrying for those gains that Ukraine had made, that maybe more personnel for the Russians might change the tide. And Jake Sullivan said that the U.S. assessment, at least at this point, was that this was not going to make a significant difference, that it was not going to hamper Ukraine's gains on the battlefield and its ability to push back on the Russians.
And Kethevane, President Biden will address the UN General Assembly a bit later on today. He's all but certain to discuss the war. What do you think we should expect from him?
Yes, the war in Ukraine is going to feature heavily in his speech. It's going to be the biggest focus of his speech. He is said, according to the White House, to be offering a sort of firm rebuke of Russia's war in Ukraine, of Russia's aggression in Ukraine. At the same time, also having this worldwide call to continue to stand in support of Ukraine, and more generally to stand for the principles of the UN charters, for the principles of one country's sovereignty and right not to be invaded by another. He's also likely to echo a little bit what we heard from the French President Emmanuel Macron yesterday when he sort of went on the attack on those countries, those so-called neutral countries. And we're going to be hearing something similar from the U.S. president, calling those neutral countries, those countries that are standing on the sidelines of this war, to sort of take a stance for the UN Charter, for those basic principles that the UN is based on. He's also going to speak very prominently about global food security, which of course is linked in part to the war in Ukraine, likely making some announcements about U.S. investments, about more U.S. investments. And finally, there's going to be a part of the speech that will be a sort of echo to his speech last year. Last year, Joe Biden came here saying, America is back with its allies. This year, he's sort of going to try to outline how America lived up to this pledge of being back, this pledge of having its word mean something, and its pledge of really working with its allies to face those global challenges.
Kethevane Gorjestani in New York. Thanks very much indeed.